you know. Now you go to these functions where, you know, there's about 20 kids somewhere and nobody looks like they're having any fun, and it's all structured, and there's all this bubble wrap in society. And it wasn't quite the same for us growing up down in Georgetown. You know, life lessons were learned really hard in Georgetown, and with very little worry about your emotional state. The fragility of a young child, you know? And I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm just telling you that's kind of the way it was. And it was like the time I found out about Santa Claus, when I was about 9 years old. So as I said, likely for financial reasons or you know, just complete efficiency more than anything, we would all gather for these events as families, you know, as extended family, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter. And I mean, I remember there used to be like an assembly line of us heading out from Georgetown out to the old Broodnell Park to celebrate the Queen's birthday. And we'd pack this lunch, you know, it'd be like a sandwich spread sandwich. Do you remember sandwich spread, you know? Someone should be shot for making me eat it, even worse. But so it'd be like a sandwich spread sandwich and a Joe Louis cake and like a Miracle Whip jar full of Freshie or Tang. And no matter how hard my mother would rinse that jar, you could never really get the taste of mayonnaise off the rim. You know? But now I talk to my kids about that. When one of my daughters, 12, she said, "Where's the Queen, Dad?" And I said, "The Queen's, you know, on the back of the money." And she says, "You got a picture of the Queen on the back of your bank card." And I said, just a whole different perspective, you know. And Christmas for us was like the ultimate celebration. It was a lot different than, like they talked about the structure and the organization. It's a lot different now. Christmas came to us. We did not go to them. So, you know, one time we were at Flossie McConnell's, where a lot of my great stories of growing up took place. My Aunt Flossie, she was my mother's sister. And, you know, we would all kind of gather there. That was kind of central to my life. And I talked to Brad the other day, my cousin, I said, you know, Christmas now, like my kids, they sit here and we pass out gifts one at a time, and they all read the cards, you know, from Nanny, and they, you know, they read it and they open the paper just like it's like a bomb or something. They're so careful, you know. And not like that when we were kids, I tell you that. Like, we would walk down the stairs about 10 to 5 in the morning, and there'd be gifts under the tree, and 5 seconds later, it was just like they evaporated. They were gone. Didn't care who they were from or who they were for. I walked around one Christmas day till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a box of tampons. I couldn't understand why the string wasn't long enough to tie to my belt buckle. Turns out they weren't for me. So like I said, we never went to malls, and we never went, like, Christmas came to us. So we were at our Aunt Flossie's one Christmas, probably about 7 or 8 days before Christmas, and 50 or 60 kids would have gathered in this small little bungalow, you know. And Georgetown Santa was quite a bit different than the Santa Claus you might see in the front of the Eaton's catalog, for example. He really was. Georgetown Santa always walked down the road from up where Teddy Easton lived, and never had a horse or sleigh. I guess I always just assumed he kind of laid that up a few days before Christmas to give the reindeer a chance to catch their breath, you know. And Georgetown Santa Claus had a pair of rubber boots on with the red soles on the bottom of them, kind of like the kind you might get over at the War Surplus in Montague. And while Georgetown Santa had a lovely red coat with fur on it, he had a pair of like green Big B work pants. And his hands were all full of calluses and dirt under his fingernails. And, you know, when you're 9 years old, it's easy to suspend hope and belief, you know, because Santa Claus is coming. So this particular Christmas, as Georgetown Santa's walking down toward Flossie's, and we're watching out the picture window with anticipation, just bouncing off the walls, you know. And there's a light dusting of snow. Those great big flakes are falling down. And with the street lights and everything glowing, it's just an amazing, beautiful vision, if you can imagine. It's like a Norman Rockwell painting inside one of those Christmas globes. Just unbelievable. Georgetown Santa waved at us through the window and we lost our minds. We just went into hysterics. And so he came into the house and he ho, 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 and he pulled up a chair in the kitchen for Georgetown Santa and he sat down. And a couple of men went over and shook his hand and gave him a glass of, looked like a water, and he gunned it down in one drink. They filled it again and on it went, and I just assumed Santa made a long walk down and probably a little thirsty, needed a little drink of water. And, well, it was water all right, but more the holy kind, I think now. Perhaps Johnny Perry would have made it a couple of hours or a couple of days earlier. So the house, you could just imagine, is a buzz. Well, kids are lining up and butting in front of each other and elbowing each other and ripping and tearing, and someone probably got a punch in the mouth somewhere along the way, and that forced one of my cousins to sort of take control and say, okay, we're going to do this 3 at a time. We're going to line up here, oldest get here first, and the rest of you go into the back room, we'll take you out 3 at a time. So that makes a certain amount of sense, except I was always one of the youngest ones, and I was quite easy to kind of push to the back of the line, and this never really sat well with me, of course, and they'd always look at me and say, stop crying and just go along. And I think when I died, they might just inscribe that right in my tombstone. So the wood stove was just snapping. It was about 160 degrees in the kitchen. And the records were playing the old Christmas carols, but not like Jingle Bells or anything, more like Jim Reeves, an old Christmas card and things like that. And the kids would all take turns sitting on Santa's knee, and he would ask them what they wanted for Christmas, and Georgetown Santa would, ho, 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 and laugh, and the kids would just be eating this up, and the next kid would come, and on it went. And we were about halfway through the pile of kids, and after every couple would go, Georgetown Santa would have another little taste of the water beside him, and, I hadn't seen him yet. I was getting quite antsy, of course, but I wasn't crying, and I was doing my level best to just keep going along. Kids kept jumping up on his knee, and Santa was trying his best to entertain them, but the night was starting to catch up to Georgetown Santa. The heat and the holy water, he was starting to slur his words a little bit. It wasn't so much a ho, ho, ho anymore as a and it was just about time for me to make my way to the living room, and I was getting really antsy when out in the kitchen there arose such a clatter. And one of my drunken uncles would have said, what in the deed is the matter? And one of the older kids came running in the back room, and they said, oh my God, Santa's dead. Well, we all ran out. Santa wasn't in the kitchen anymore. Nobody was. And the door was open, just ajar, and we could tell there was footprints, and there was a bit of a melee outside, so out we went, and on the doorstep, and I stopped, and I looked. And it was just like someone took that snow globe and they smashed it with a ball-peen hammer. Georgetown Santa was laid out in the road. His beard was gone, his jacket was open, he was on all fours, dry heaving. And 3 or 4 of my uncles had him by the arms, and they were heading back up the road from which he came. And I couldn't take it anymore, I started to cry. And I looked at my Aunt Flossie, and I, with big tears in my eyes, I said, Santa's dead, what are we going to do now? And as I tell you, lessons are learned hard in Georgetown. No remorse for how you're feeling emotionally. She looked at me and shook her head and said, you're one fool, aren't you?